There's a way of thinking about music that causes so much unnecessary confusion. This way of thinking is inefficient, it is outdated, and it just simply leaves too many unanswered questions. So there is actually no official proof to say that this way of thinking is true. People have arguments, and in this video I'm going to present to you 5 common arguments that people will give trying to back up this claim that I'm talking about, but none of these arguments actually hold any weight, and in this video I want to show you why that is the case. So the argument that I'm talking about is when people say there are 24 keys in music. So some people will even say that there's 30 keys in music. The implication here is that you have major keys and you have minor keys. The two are totally different things. That right there is the root of so much confusion, so many unanswered questions. I see it all the time. I deal with it all the time. I see where people are getting stuck at. It comes down to this. All right. So if this is something that sounds interesting to you, stick around and watch the video. Hey guys, Brian Kelly here from Zombie Guitar. This video I'm making because I pretty much have to. I have no choice. The reason is because in my line of work, this guy that I am that teaches music theory online, people, they attack me. They insult me. They just come at me. And that's cool, whatever. I have thick skin. You can insult me all you want. I don't care. It doesn't hurt my feelings. The thing is, they don't have an argument, all right? They don't have an argument to back up their claim. So the reason I'm making this video is because I try to help people out. So when I'm not making videos, when I'm not editing videos, when I'm not recording videos, when I'm not writing music or whatever, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Reddit, I'm on YouTube, I'm answering people's questions. I'm just trying to help people, all right? So in this one specific music theory group that I'm on in Facebook, someone asked the question, hey, how many keys are there? And I said, well, I'm a supporter of the 12-key line of thinking. And then I provided them a link to an article and a video that I made about 2 months ago called How Many Keys Are There? In this article and this video, I simply presented the different perspectives. I said, okay, this is why some people may think that there's 12 keys. This is why some people may think that there's 13 keys. This is why some people may think there's 15. This is why some people may think there's 30. This is why some people may think that there's, 84 keys. I presented all the different sides of the argument in a very objective way. And by doing that, let me just kind of show you some of the responses that I get in return for me just simply trying to help people. I got my phone here. I'm going to read some of them to you. I replied to this post. I said, I'm a 12-key supporter. Here's an article that compares the various different perspectives. I'm not looking for an argument. I'm just saying, hey, these are the different perspectives. I go with 12. If you want to think otherwise, that's cool. People start attacking me. I see you are a group specialist. I advise always to check the facts. Okay? Read the article, I said, because in the article, I state the facts. All right, but I guess he didn't want to read the article. He was very convinced that he was right. But that wasn't really the insulting one. This is the insulting one. This other person comes along and says, that's looking at it as patterns, not what it is. It's a key. So this guy obviously did not read the article that I linked to. He didn't watch the video that I linked to because I don't even use a guitar in that video. I simply state the different perspectives of how many keys there are in music using a piano. I said, this is why some people think there's 12. This is why some people think there's 15. This is why some people think there's 24. And I use a piano. I don't even use a guitar, so I don't know what he means by patterns. A key means something in music. Open any sheet music and sit down with any instrument, and you take a look at the key signature and proceed to play. There are 30, and it's for good reasons. He then says, strive to be a musician, not a guitarist. Well, anyone that uses the Zombie Guitar website knows that I teach people to be musicians, not just a guitarist, so I don't think this guy's a member. He then goes on and says, having said that, Zombie Guitar is awesome. Well, thank you, buddy. I appreciate the compliment. Anyway, this is the kind of stuff I deal with. And these people, I will go back and forth with them. I'll say, okay, this is why I think there's 12. Why do you think there's 30? And they'll then present me these different arguments. None of these arguments hold any ground. I come to realize these people don't really know what they're talking about. They're just regurgitating information that they have heard somewhere else in other videos, and they're trying to insult me. They're trying to make me look bad. I don't know what their goal is, but their arguments hold no ground. We're just going to talk about a key signature real quick. What does a key signature entail? A key signature is where you take any one of the 12 possible notes in in Western music, we have this 12-note system of music. You can take any one of the 12 notes, that is going to be your starting note. If you start on that note and then you play the major scale, those 7 notes that you come up with, that's what creates the key signature. All right, so start on any one of the 7 notes, play your major scale. Those 7 notes that are formed from playing your major scale, that's where you get your key signature from. So because there's 12 possible starting notes, you have 12 possible key signatures. Some people will say that there's 15 key signatures, and this argument actually, I agree with this argument. This argument has a valid point, all right? People say that there's 15 key signatures because C major is the one key signature that has no sharps, no flats in it. The notes in the key signature of C major are C, D, E, F, G, A, and B. And then as you move around your circle of fifths in the clockwise direction, each key signature adds 1 sharp. So the key of G major has a sharp in it. The key of D major has 2 sharps in it. The key of A major has 3 sharps in it. Theoretically, you could keep on going, and you can keep adding sharps until you have a total of 7 sharps. So you have this one key, it's called C sharp major, that has 7 sharps in it. You can do the same thing if you start at the top of the circle of fifths and you move in the counterclockwise direction, adding a flat each time. So the key signature of F major has 1 flat. The key signature of B flat major has 2 flats. Keep going around, eventually you get to the C flat major key that has 7 flats. So you have 7 sharp keys, 7 flat keys, and then 1 key that has no sharps or flats in it. So you add 7 plus 7 together, plus 1, you have 15. So although this seems a bit redundant, the 12 key model has less redundancies than this 15 key model. There is a time and place for some of these weird keys. So when it comes to sheet music, you're writing music in standard notation, you may want to start out in, say, the key of A flat major, write your music in A flat major, and then you may want to do a key change to, say, the key of B major. Well, A flat major is a key that contains flats, the key of B major is a key that contains sharps. So on sheet music, it may make more sense to say, okay, we're starting out in this one key that contains flats. We're then going to do a key change halfway through the song that contains more flats. So on sheet music, you kind of want to avoid having a bunch of flats and sharps all on the same piece of sheet music, if at all possible. That's not always possible, but if you can avoid it and you want to keep everything flats, and you want to say, okay, we're changing from the key of A flat major to the key of C flat major, that is one instance where that may be applicable. So in my opinion, 15 keys, cool. I am a pro 15 key person. I personally support the 12 key model. If you support the 15 key model, no problem. I'm on board. Let's now talk about these various different arguments that people have about this 24 versus 30 key thing though. All right, so let's now look at where these minor keys come from. So if you take a key signature, let's just use the key signature of G major as our example. The key signature of G major has the 7 notes, G, A, B, C, D, E, and F sharp. G major is the key that contains 1 sharp. Those are the 7 unique notes in the key signature of G major. If I start on the note G on a piano or any instrument and I play the Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, La, Ti scale, the 7 notes that are going to come out of that are going to be G, A, B, C, D, E, and F sharp. That's where we get that particular key signature. So some people may say, all right, well, E minor. E minor is the relative minor of the key of G major. It contains the same notes. It contains the same chords. If you look at the 7 chords that are found in the key of G major, you have a G major chord, an A minor chord, a B minor chord, C major, D major, E minor, and then you have an F sharp diminished chord. Those are your 7 chords found in the key signature of G major. You can say, okay, well, E minor is the relative minor of G major. The same 7 notes are found in the key of E minor. The same 7 chords are found in the key of E minor, but it's a different key. So G major is a different key than E minor. Okay? That's what we're going to talk about here. Why are they 2 different keys? Argument number 1. That's the way they've been doing it for hundreds of years. Okay, that's the way they've been doing it for hundreds of years. A couple hundred years ago, they didn't have airplanes, they didn't have cell phones, they didn't have the internet, they didn't have microwaves, and they didn't have Netflix. Now they do. So if I want to fly to the other side of the country, rather than jumping into my horse and buggy, I'm just going to pull out my cell phone and I'm going to book a flight. I'm going to fly to the other side of the country. It's going to take a few hours. Once I get there, I'm going to pop some food in the microwave. I'm going to kick on some Netflix. I'm going to take a nap. It's going to be awesome. Things improve. Things evolve. Things get more efficient over time. So because they did that a couple hundred years ago, that's your argument? Sorry, it doesn't hold any ground. Next argument. Argument number 2, the tonal center. This is a great argument. I totally agree with this argument, but it doesn't prove the point. You take your key signature, you have your 7 chords, you have your 7 notes. This is your key signature of G major. You don't use any outside notes. If you play any chords that consist of notes outside of these 7 notes, then it's an out of key chord. If you play any notes in your soloing or your melody line, or you sing a note other than one of these 7 notes, it's an out of key note. You have a clearly defined key signature that consists of these 7 notes and these 7 chords. If you write your music, you write your chord progression, and you stick within this key signature, but you make the G major chord to be your tonal center, it's going to have a sound. It's going to have this happy major sound. You can then rearrange all the stuff if you want. And instead of saying G major is the tonal center, instead of writing your chord progression revolving around this G major chord, you can do the same thing, but you can make the E minor chord to be your tonal center. So of the 7 chords, G major, A minor, B minor, C major, D major, E minor, F sharp diminished, E minor is the 6th chord. So if you take the 6th chord of this key signature and you rearrange stuff, you make that to be your new 1 chord, you make that to be your new tonal center. You write music that your chord progressions all lead back to this E minor chord. You're soloing over top of it. E is your home note. E is your tonal center within this grouping of 7 notes. The sound that is produced is going to be different. It's going to be a minor sound. So a major sound sounds happy, minor sound sounds sad, bluesy, however you want to describe it. They have 2 different sounds, all right? I agree 100%. G major and E minor, they have 2 different tonalities. They're the same key signature though, 2 different tonalities. So people will say, well, that's why, because G major and E minor have a different tonality. Okay, well, my argument is, what if I want to make another one of the chords to be the tonal center within this grouping of 7 chords? What if I want to take the A minor chord and I want to make that to be your tonal center? And then within the 7 notes of this key signature, G, A, B, C, D, E, and F sharp, I want to make the note A to be my note of focus. Can I do that? Oh yeah, I can do that, right? But that doesn't count as a key though, right? If I do it with the B minor chord, I want to make the B minor chord my tonal center. Does that count as a key? No, it doesn't. What about the C chord within this grouping of 7 chords? No, it doesn't count as a key either. Okay, so the 1st chord and the 6th chord, they get to be counted as keys, but the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 7th chords, they don't get that privilege? Why? Argument number 3, modes aren't keys. All right, so what we just talked about before, when you take all this stuff and you say G major is your tonal center, the sound that is produced is called the Ionian mode. So another name for a major key is the Ionian mode. If you rearrange all your stuff and then you make this E minor chord to be your tonal center, you make the note E within this unique grouping of 7 notes, you make the note E to be your tonal center, and you write music revolving around this E and this E minor, which has this different sound, that is known as writing in the Aeolian mode. So the Ionian mode is also known as the major key. The Aeolian mode is also known as a minor key. If I instead treat the A minor chord and of course the associated note A within this grouping of 7 notes as my tonal center, that is called the Dorian mode. If I make the B minor chord to be my tonal center within this grouping of 7 chords, and the associated note B within this unique grouping of 7 notes, B minor is my tonal center, that's the Phrygian mode. Are they keys? No, they're modes. So what's so special about Ionian? What's so special about Aeolian? Those are keys and modes, but if I want to talk about the Dorian mode, or if I want to talk about the Phrygian mode, they don't get that privilege. They're just modes. They're not keys. Why? Argument number 4, the dominant chord. People will say that when you're writing music in the major perspective of a key signature versus the minor perspective of a key signature, you will do certain things differently to the minor perspective. And this is true. I agree with this. What I'm talking about is the introduction of this dominant chord. When you're writing the music from the major perspective, there's a naturally occurring dominant chord. What a dominant chord is, it's the 5th chord in relation to the 1st chord. So in the key of G major, if G major is your 1 chord, the 5th chord in relation to G major is a D major chord. If you look at the D major chord in its 7th form, you can look at all the chords in their 7th form. The 5th chord in a major key is always going to be a dominant 7th chord. A D dominant 7 chord consists of the notes D, F sharp, A, and C. All those notes are part of this key signature. There's no out of key notes being used. Therefore, that D dominant 7 chord is 100% in the key signature. So there's nothing outside about that chord. If you shift your perspective over to the minor perspective and say, okay, now E minor is my tonal center. E minor is my new 1 chord. The 5th chord in relation to the E minor chord is a B minor chord. So when you're writing music and you kind of use that B minor chord in there, it doesn't quite lead back to the E minor chord as nicely as a B major chord would. The reason is because when you make that minor chord into a major chord, it introduces what is known as a leading tone. But it's still an out-of-key chord. All right, so the in-key chord is a B minor chord. The changing it to a B major chord, you're now introducing one out-of-key note. That one out-of-key note is the note D sharp. That D sharp is the leading tone that leads you back to the E, which is your tonal center, but it's still an out-of-key chord nonetheless. Even if you make that B major chord into a dominant 7 chord, which is fine, it's still an out-of-key chord because it has that one out-of-key note. It's fine to do that, but just be aware that you're using an out-of-key chord. All right? When you're writing in minor, you don't have to do that, though. That's not a requirement. Let's say I just want to write a chord progression that consists of E minor, C major, D major. That's 100% in the key. I can make E minor to be my tonal center. I didn't introduce any out-of-key dominant chords, so I don't have to do that. Then there's the other, if G major, I don't want to make that my tonal center. I don't want to make E minor my tonal center. Let's say I want to make A minor my tonal center. Well, I can always just throw a dominant chord in there too to help me lead back to that A minor, can't I? The notes of an E major chord are E, G sharp, and B. The note G sharp is an out-of-key note, and therefore it's a non-diatonic chord. You can still do it if you're writing music from the Dorian perspective. It's an out-of-key chord. You're doing the exact same thing as you would be doing as if you were treating the E minor chord as your tonal center. But when you do it to the A minor chord, it's only a mode. When you do it to the E minor chord, it's a key. Why? Argument number 5. Because Victor Wooten says so. This is actually the best argument that has been presented yet. Out of all 5 of those arguments, because Victor Wooten says so, that is the one that comes closest to convincing me. But it doesn't quite convince me. All right? I'm not going to agree with that just because Victor Wooten says so. I'm not. The reason that this is the best argument yet is because Victor Wooten is amazing. He is a god of a bass player. He is so good. He is so much of a better musician than I am. And while I'm sitting here just being a nerd and arguing about how many keys there are in music and stuff like that, I'm sitting here studying my theory, I like it. I own my nerdism. I'm a nerd, 100%. I own it. I love it. This is what I do. But while I'm sitting here being a nerd, Victor Wooten's out there making music. He is out there just being awesome, playing awesome music. He's a virtuoso bass player. So if he says something, people are going to listen. I'm going to listen. I'm going to listen to this man. This man knows what he's talking about, all right? However, that's still not enough of a convincing argument to prove the point as to why Ionian and Aeolian are special enough to be called keys, but Dorian, Phrygian, Mixolydian, and Lydian are not. Because Victor Wooten says so does not prove that point. All right, so those are the 5 different arguments that I hear all the time where people are trying to back up this claim that there's 24 keys or 30 keys in music. And as I just explained to you, none of those 5 arguments actually hold any weight. None of those actually prove this point. Therefore, I cannot be convinced that there are 24 or 30 keys. Just because they've been doing it that way for hundreds of years does not mean that it's the right way. All right? So 12 keys, that's the one that I go with. I support the 12 key theory. I teach the 12 key theory. That's the simplest way in my opinion. 15 keys, I support that. If you're a 15 key supporter, I'm with you. I back you up 100%. From a sheet music perspective, there is certain situations where using the key of C flat major or the key of C sharp major will be beneficial. So although redundant, I am a 15 key supporter. Absolutely. 24 keys, 30 keys, I don't support it. If you want to say that there's 72 keys or 84 keys or 105 keys, which essentially treats all the modes as keys without giving any special privilege to Ionian and Aeolian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Ionian, Aeolian, they're all treated equally, therefore resulting in this high number of keys. If you want to go with that, I support that too. 24 keys or 30 keys, which essentially gives special priority to Ionian and Aeolian, unless you can prove to me why, then that this answer still has not been, this theory still has not been proven true.